Khalid al-Rashidi threw his napkin on the table and stood up in fury. No restaurant in America deserved his presence, but when the waitress leaned close and whispered something in perfect Arabic, his legs nearly gave out and tears filled his eyes. The Golden Horizon restaurant occupied the entire penthouse floor of a gleaming skyscraper in downtown Manhattan. Its floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city lights, and its reputation for excellence attracted diplomats, celebrities, and titans of industry from around the world. This was the kind of place where a single meal cost more than most people earned in a month, where bottles of wine were worth more than luxury cars, and where the powerful gathered to close billion-dollar deals over plates of meticulously crafted cuisine. Elena Vasquez adjusted her black vest over her crisp white shirt as she balanced a tray of crystal champagne flutes. At 29 years old, she had worked here for 5 years, memorizing every detail of the impeccable service the establishment demanded. She knew how to fold napkins into swans, which wine paired with each dish, and the precise moment to approach or retreat from a table. Her mother, Fatima, had passed away 4 years ago, leaving Elena alone in the world, a cruel illness that took her in just a few months. Since then, Elena had worked tirelessly to maintain the small apartment they had shared for so many years, the only place that still held the presence of her mother. It was a simple life, but an honest one, and Elena had learned from Fatima that dignity has no price. That Friday evening, however, something was different at the restaurant. The main table, reserved for the most distinguished guests, had been prepared with attention Elena had never witnessed in all her years of work. Imported flowers from Holland, special silver utensils that normally stayed locked in the safe, and a team of 6 employees dedicated exclusively to a single client. "Who is tonight's guest?" she asked Marcus, her colleague and friend, while they polished glasses in the service area. "An Arab billionaire, Khalid al-Rashidi." Marcus lowered his voice as if afraid of being overheard. "He owns one of the largest petroleum companies in the Middle East. He's in America, closing a massive deal with several major corporations." "Why all the nervousness? We've hosted important people before." "Because he's impossible to please. They say he's already shut down 3 restaurants in Europe just because he didn't like how the salt was seasoned. Mr. Thompson has been in a panic since yesterday." Elena shook her head. She had served difficult people before, arrogant politicians who treated waiters like servants, businessmen who considered service staff as inferior, celebrities who demanded the impossible and complained when they didn't get it. It was part of the job, and she had learned to swallow her pride for the sake of the paycheck at the end of the month. What she didn't expect was the true hurricane that was about to walk through those doors. Khalid al-Rashidi arrived at 8 o'clock sharp, accompanied by an entourage of 6 people who looked more like bodyguards than advisors. He wore an impeccable traditional Arab attire, black with golden embroidery that sparkled under the restaurant's lights. His presence was imposing and intimidating, the kind of man who made the air feel heavier just by existing in the same space. Mr. Thompson, the restaurant manager, rushed to receive him personally. "Mr. al-Rashidi, it is an honor to have you here. Your table is prepared exactly as requested." Khalid didn't respond. He didn't even look at Thompson. His dark eyes scanned the environment with an expression that mixed boredom and disdain. He walked to the table without thanking, without greeting, without acknowledging the existence of the manager who bowed before him. The other customers immediately sensed the tension. Some conversations lowered in volume. Curious glances turned toward the imposing figure who had just arrived. A woman at a nearby table whispered something to her husband. Eleanor was assigned to serve the main table. She approached with all the professionalism she had cultivated, offering the menu with a courteous smile. "Good evening, sir. Welcome. May I offer you our wine list?" Khalid ignored her completely, as if she were transparent. He continued speaking in Arabic with one of the men in his entourage, gesturing with impatience. Eleanor remained there, waiting, the menu suspended in the air. A minute passed, then 2. The situation was becoming embarrassing. Finally, an advisor brusquely took the menu from her hands and made a curt gesture for her to leave immediately. Eleanor returned to the service area, swallowing the discomfort and humiliation. It wasn't the first time she had been treated like she was invisible. It probably wouldn't be the last. "How is he?" Marcus asked anxiously. "Complicated. Very complicated." The first hour passed in growing tension that seemed to contaminate the entire restaurant. Dishes arrived at the table and returned practically untouched. Khalid complained about everything. the temperature of the food, the visual presentation, the wait time between courses. Each complaint was made in irritated Arabic, translated by an advisor to Thompson, who bent over backward with apologies. "You are giving us the opportunity to improve," Thompson said, sweat breaking out on his forehead. "Please allow us to prepare something especially for your palate." Khalid dismissed each attempt with an irritated wave of his hand. Eleanor observed from afar, genuinely intrigued. There was something strange about that man's exaggerated behavior. His anger seemed disproportionate, almost theatrical. It was as if he were looking for reasons to be irritated, as if he needed a target to unload something much greater that he carried inside. And then the disaster happened. A young waiter, nervous from the suffocating pressure, stumbled as he approached the table. The wine spilled onto the white tablecloth, splashing onto the sleeve of Khalid's attire. The silence that followed was absolute and terrifying. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath collectively. Khalid rose slowly, looking at the stain as if it were an unforgivable personal affront. When he raised his eyes, there was something dangerous in his gaze. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" His voice was deep, controlled, but loaded with fury that made the waiter retreat 2 steps, pale with terror. "Sir, I'm sorry, it was an accident, I didn't mean to." "An accident?" Khalid let out a dry laugh. "This attire belonged to my father. It's a piece with 100 years of history, and you, with your incompetence, just stained it." Thompson rushed to intervene. "Mr. Al-Rashidi, please, we will cover all the cleaning costs." "Costs? You think this is about money? You Americans think everything can be solved with money?" The entire restaurant was in silence, all eyes fixed on the scene. "This restaurant is a joke," Khalid continued, his voice rising. "The service is a joke. The food is a joke. No restaurant in this country deserves my presence." He began walking toward the exit, his entourage rising to accompany him. "You will hear about this. The whole world will know how I was treated here," customers whispered. Some pulled out their phones, filming. The nightmare of any establishment was materializing in real time. It was at that moment that Elena made a decision that would change her life forever. She didn't know what drove her. Perhaps it was the desperate look on Thompson's face, a man who had always treated her with respect. Perhaps it was the injustice of seeing the young waiter trembling with fear. Or perhaps it was something deeper, an inner voice saying that this man wasn't just angry at a restaurant. Elena took a deep breath and firmly placed herself in Khalid's path, blocking his way. The billionaire stopped, surprised. No one had dared to stand in front of him that evening. "Excuse me," he said dryly. "You're in my way." Elena didn't move. Her eyes met his, and for a moment, something passed between them. A silent recognition that this interaction would be different from all the others. And then Elena spoke, but not in English. "أنا أرى غضبك، لكنني أرى أيضا حزنك. ما الذي يؤلمك حقا الليلة?" The words came out in fluent Arabic, with a pronunciation that revealed not just knowledge, but intimacy with the language, an intimacy that came from something much deeper than books or courses. Khalid froze. His expression changed completely. The mask of fury crumbled, giving way to something no one expected: vulnerability. "What did you say?" he murmured in English, his voice failing. "I said I see your anger," Elena responded in Arabic, "but I also see your sadness, and I asked what is really hurting you tonight." Khalid took a step back, as if the words were a physical blow. His eyes glistened with tears. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice breaking. "I'm just a waitress. But my mother taught me that sometimes the people who shout the loudest are the ones who most need to be heard." "Your mother?" "Yes, her name was Fatima." Khalid's reaction was immediate and devastating. His legs lost their strength. He staggered, needing to support himself on a chair. An advisor rushed to help him, but Khalid pushed him away with a gesture. "Fatima?" he repeated, his voice no more than a whisper. "So you said Fatima." Elena nodded, not understanding the reaction, but sensing that she had touched something much greater than she had imagined. "She passed away 4 years ago. She was the one who taught me Arabic, who taught me about the culture, the poetry, the soul of your people." Khalid al-Rashidi, the furious billionaire, now had tears streaming down his face, making no effort to hide them. "Fatima," he repeated, and the way he pronounced the name carried decades of meaning. Everyone watched without understanding. How had a waitress transformed that man into tears with just a few words? "Mr. al-Rashidi," Elena said softly, "did you know my mother?" Khalid raised his eyes. And in that look, Elena saw something that would change her life forever. "Did I know her?" he said, his voice choked with emotion. "Young lady, your mother was the love of my life, and I spent 30 years searching for her." Elena felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. The words didn't make sense. They couldn't make sense. "That's not possible," she murmured. Khalid took a step toward her. "You have her eyes, exactly the same eyes. How didn't I notice before?" "Sir, I don't understand. What is your full name?" "Elena. Elena Fatima Vasquez." Khalid closed his eyes, absorbing the impact. "Fatima, she gave you her name." Elena felt tears in her own eyes. "My mother never spoke about my father. She only said he was a man from a distant land, and that circumstances separated them before I was born." Khalid turned to his entourage, giving instructions in Arabic. The advisors stepped back to give them privacy. Then he turned back to Elena, his expression carrying decades of regret. "We need to talk privately. There's a story you need to hear. A story that should have been told a long time ago." Thompson approached hesitantly. "We can prepare a private room." Khalid didn't take his eyes off Elena. "Yes, a private room, and I don't want to be interrupted." As they were led to the back of the restaurant, Elena felt her heart pounding. 4 years ago, she had buried her mother without knowing the truth about her father. And now, fate had placed before her the man who might have all the answers. Before entering the private room, she looked back. The restaurant was in shock. Marcus watched her with wide eyes. She tried to convey that she was fine, but she didn't even believe it herself, because nothing was fine. Nothing would ever be the same. When the door closed, isolating her with the billionaire who claimed to have loved her mother, Elena knew her life had just changed forever. "Sit down," Khalid said gently, indicating an armchair. Elena obeyed, her legs trembling. "What I'm about to tell you should have been said a long time ago. But first I need you to understand one thing." "What?" Khalid looked into her eyes, and Elena saw there a pain that transcended words. "I never knew you existed. If I had known, I would have moved heaven and earth to find you, to find both of you." "But how is that possible?" "Because 30 years ago, when your mother disappeared from my life, she took a secret with her, a secret that I now understand is you." Elena felt the world spin. "You're saying that?" "I'm saying I need to do a test to be absolutely certain. But in my heart, Elena, I already know the truth." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "I believe you are my daughter." Tarsin, the private room, had dark wooden walls and soft lighting that created an atmosphere of confidentiality. It was the kind of place where million-dollar deals were closed and secrets were shared far from curious ears. A bottle of mineral water and 2 crystal glasses waited untouched on the coffee table. Elena was seated in a green velvet armchair, her hands interlaced in her lap, to disguise the trembling she couldn't control. Across the table, Khalid al-Rashidi seemed to have aged a decade in the last few minutes. The mask of the arrogant billionaire had disappeared completely, revealing a man haunted by ghosts from a past he had never been able to overcome. "Before I continue," Khalid said, his voice still hoarse with emotion, "I need to know, what did your mother tell you about me? About your father?" Elena swallowed hard, her throat tight. "Almost nothing. She said my father was a man from a distant land who loved her deeply, but that forces greater than them separated them forever. She said he never knew I existed, and that she preferred it that way. She always preferred to keep that secret. Why would she prefer to hide something so important? I asked constantly when I was a child. I begged to know more, to understand my complete history, but my mother always deflected the subject with gentle firmness. She said some stories are too heavy to be carried by young shoulders, and that she was protecting me from something I couldn't yet comprehend." "Protecting you from what exactly?" "I never found out the answer. When she became gravely ill some years ago, I tried to ask again with more urgency, but she was already too weak for long conversations. The cancer had consumed her strength rapidly." Elena paused to control her emotion. "The last words she said to me were in Arabic. I always thought it was significant that she chose to leave speaking the language she loved so much." Khalid leaned forward, his eyes intense and bright. "What did she say? Do you remember the words?" Elena felt her eyes burn with the memory of that moment in the hospital. She said, "Forgive me for everything I hid from you, my daughter. One day you will understand my reasons." And then, holding my hand, "He never stopped loving you even without knowing you existed. This I always knew in my heart." The silence that followed was dense, loaded with meanings that Elena still struggled to comprehend. "Your mother," Khalid began slowly, "was the only woman I truly loved in my entire life, the only genuine love I've ever known. And the story of how I lost her is something that has tormented me for 3 complete decades, without a single day of true peace." He rose and walked to the window, looking at the city lights without really seeing them, lost in memories from another time. "I met her when I was 25 years old. I was young, ambitious, convinced that the world belonged to me. My father had just given me control over part of the business, and I was traveling constantly to expand our horizons." He paused, lost in memories that still caused pain. "It was at a business conference in Paris that I saw her for the first time. Fatima worked as an interpreter for one of the delegations. She spoke 7 languages with absolute perfection, but it wasn't her intelligence that initially enchanted me." "What was it then?" Khalid turned, and there was a glow of deep longing in his dark eyes. "It was the way she looked at me that first time. Everyone around me treated me with reverence, with fear, with calculated interest in my fortune. But Fatima looked at me as if I were just an ordinary man, not an heir, not a walking fortune, just a man. That completely disarmed me. No one had ever looked at me that genuinely before." Eleanor recognized something in that description. Her mother had always had that gift of seeing beyond appearances, of finding the humanity hidden beneath the masks people wore to protect themselves. "We fell in love quickly," Khalid continued, returning to sit down. "It was overwhelming, the kind of love that consumes everything around it. For months we found ways to see each other despite the distance. She would travel to where I was. I would invent excuses to go to Paris. We made plans for the future. What kind of plans? Marriage, family, a lifetime together." Khalid's voice faltered. "I wanted to introduce her to my family, make her my wife, but there were serious obstacles that I gravely underestimated." "What obstacles?" "My father. My traditional family. The rigid expectations that came with the al-Rashidi name for generations." Khalid sat back down, his shoulders curved under the weight of painful memories. "My father was extremely traditional and controlling, rigid in his convictions about honor, lineage, about what was appropriate for an al-Rashidi. When he discovered about Fatima, he was absolutely furious. He said I was staining the family name, that a woman without known origin, without fortune, without connections, would never be accepted in our circle. But you loved her deeply, with every fiber of my being, and I said that clearly to my father during our confrontation. I said I didn't care about antiquated traditions, that Fatima was my future, and I would give up absolutely everything for her." "What happened then?" Khalid closed his eyes for a moment, as if gathering strength. "My father gave me a cruel ultimatum. He said that if I insisted on that relationship, I would be completely disinherited, banished from the family forever. I would have to choose Fatima or my inheritance, my name, everything I had known since birth. And you chose—" "I chose Fatima." Khalid opened his eyes, and there was in them a conviction that time had not erased. Without hesitating for a second, I told my father I would rather live in poverty with the woman I loved. I was prepared to lose everything. Eleanor felt her heart tighten for her mother. "Then why did you separate? What happened that was so terrible?" "Because my father was extremely powerful, and powerful men rarely accept not getting what they want." Khalid's expression hardened with old bitterness. "He went after Fatima personally without my knowledge. He discovered where she lived in Paris, confronted her alone when I wasn't there to protect her. I don't know what he said to her in that meeting, what threats he made, what lies he told. But when I returned to find her the next day, she had disappeared completely." "Disappeared? What do you mean?" "Her apartment was empty. Her things had vanished. The neighbors knew nothing. It was as if Fatima had evaporated from the face of the earth without a trace." Elena processed the information, trying to connect it with her own history. "My mother came to America when I was very small. She always lived here, worked as a language teacher. She never had much money, we lived simply, but she made sure I had a good education, that I learned languages, that I knew about other cultures." "She fled," Khalid said, his voice loaded with bitterness and belated understanding. "She fled to the other side of the world to escape my family. And she took you in absolute secrecy, without me ever knowing of the existence of my own daughter. But why? Why didn't she tell you about the pregnancy? Knowing my father and what he was capable of, he probably threatened to do something terrible if she didn't disappear forever. And knowing your mother and her generous heart, she would have made any sacrifice to protect me. even if it meant losing me forever. Elena felt tears streaming down her face. The image forming was of a woman who loved so deeply that she gave up everything to protect those she loved. I searched for her for years without rest, Khalid continued. I hired the best investigators, spent fortunes, but Fatima was too intelligent. She changed her name, her country, built a new life. It was like looking for a needle in an infinite ocean. She never used her real surname here in America, Elena confirmed. Vasquez was the name of an American family that took her in when she arrived. That's why I never found her, despite all the resources. Khalid sighed deeply. And my father died 15 years ago, taking with him the details of what happened in Paris. I was never able to confront him. Elena wiped her tears. What happens now? We do a DNA test to have absolute certainty of what my heart already knows. And if it confirms, Khalid stood up and walked to her, kneeling before Elena. I will spend the rest of my life trying to compensate for the lost years. I can't bring your mother back, and that pain will never disappear. But I can guarantee that you will never need anything again. I don't want your money, Elena said firmly. I never wanted it, and I don't want it now. I know, and that makes me certain that you are Fatima's daughter. She also never cared about money. Khalid held her hands. I'm not just offering money. I'm offering family, a family you don't even know you have. Elena widened her eyes. Family, what do you mean? I married years after losing Fatima. An arranged marriage without love, to meet expectations. I had 2 children. Tariq is 26 years old, works with me, is ambitious. And Nadia is 29, the same age as you, more sensitive. If you are my daughter, they are your half-siblings. The magnitude hit Elena with force. In one night she had gone from anonymous waitress to possible heiress of a billionaire fortune. This is too much, she whispered. It's too much information to process. I understand we can do the test calmly, and then you decide what to do with your life. A knock on the door interrupted them. Thompson appeared hesitantly. The restaurant is about to close. The employees are asking about Elena. Elena looked at the clock, surprised. More than 2 hours had passed. I'm fine, Mr. Thompson. Just a few more minutes. Thompson nodded and closed the door silently. You need to rest, Khalid said with gentleness. I'll arrange for the test this week. They stood up. Khalid hesitated, then embraced her with care. The embrace was awkward, loaded with decades of absence. But there was something there, a connection that transcended logic. I will find the truth, Khalid whispered. For the memory of your mother and for you. When Elena left, Marcus was waiting for her at the back entrance. What happened? You were in there for 2 hours with that man. It's a long story, one that even I don't understand yet. You're scaring me. I know I need time to process. At the exit, Elena breathed in the fresh night air. She thought about her mother, about Fatima, the courageous woman who fled to the other side of the world, who raised a daughter alone, keeping a painful secret until the end. Why did you never tell me, Mom? Elena whispered to the starry sky. The subway arrived and Elena boarded. Seated by the window, she made a silent promise. I will discover everything, Mom. I will understand why you did what you did. As the subway carried her home, Elena didn't notice the black car that followed at a distance. Inside the vehicle, a man named Omar spoke on the phone in Arabic. Sir, we have a problem. The waitress who confronted Khalid may be more than she appears. He spent 2 hours in a private room with her, and when he left he seemed like a different man. From the other end of the line, a grave voice responded. Find out everything about this woman. Who she is, where she came from, what her connection to Khalid is. If she represents a threat to our plans, we need to know immediately. And if she's important to him. There was a tense pause. Then she becomes our top priority. No one can interfere with the deal we're about to close. Absolutely no one. The car continued following the subway, maintaining distance. And Elena, lost in thoughts about her mother and the father she had just met, had no idea that her life was about to become much more complicated and dangerous than she could ever have imagined. The days that followed that night at the restaurant were the strangest of Elena's life. She continued her apparently normal routine, waking up early, taking the crowded subway, serving elegant customers who never looked twice at her face. But inside, absolutely everything had changed irreversibly. The DNA test was done 3 days later, at a private clinic that Elena would never have been able to afford. Khalid insisted on covering all costs and accompanying her personally. They sat side by side in the waiting room. in a silence loaded with expectation and anxiety. "How long does the result take?" Eleanor asked, her hands restless. "I asked them to expedite the process. We should have the answer in a week." A week. 7 days to discover if her life had been built on an incomplete truth that her mother kept until her last breath. "Are you nervous?" Khalid asked gently. "Very." "And you?" "I've already said for you to call me Khalid. And yes, I'm nervous, but also strangely at peace." "At peace?" "Because regardless of the result, I found someone who knew Fatima. Someone who carries a piece of her. That's already more than I had a week ago." Eleanor felt her eyes burn. There was something genuine in that man, something that contrasted with the furious billionaire she had met at the restaurant. "Can I ask you a personal question?" she said hesitantly. "Of course you can. You said you married after losing my mother. What is your wife like?" Khalid's expression closed slightly, a shadow passing through his eyes. "Samira is a respectable woman. She comes from a traditional family, fulfills all social expectations. Our marriage was arranged and she always knew there was no love on my part." "Isn't that sad for her?" "Perhaps it was, in the beginning. But Samira also didn't love me. She loved another man whom her family didn't approve of. Our marriage was a convenience for both of us, a way to satisfy our families." "And your children, what are they like?" "Tariq is 26 years old. He works with me in the business. He's ambitious, sometimes ruthless, very much like what I was in my youth." Khalid paused. "And there's Nadia, 29 years old. More sensitive, more questioning. She's always had difficulty fitting into the family's expectations." "Do they know about me?" "Not yet. I want to be sure before telling them. And I need to find the right way to present this information. Do you think they will accept me?" Khalid hesitated. It was a hesitation that said more than words. "Nadia will welcome you with open arms. I'm sure of it. She's always wanted a sister." "And Tariq?" "Tariq is complicated. He sees the world in terms of power and position. He might view you as a threat to his inheritance, to his place in the family." "I've already said I don't want money." "I know. But Tariq won't believe that easily. In our family, everyone always wants something." That evening, the Golden Horizon restaurant was busier than normal. A birthday party occupied half the room, and Elena ran between tables, balancing trays and smiling at customers who barely registered her existence. Marcus approached during a moment of pause. "You've been different these days," he said. "More distracted. Did something happen?" "A lot has happened, Marcus, but I can't talk about it yet." "Does it have to do with that Arab billionaire?" Eleanor hesitated. "It does. Is he threatening you? Because if he is, we can go to the police or—" "It's nothing like that." Elena touched her friend's arm. "It's complicated, but it's not bad. At least I don't think it is. You're making me worried." "I know, I promise I'll tell you everything when I can. But for now, I need you to trust me." Marcus nodded, clearly dissatisfied but respecting her boundaries. Around 10 o'clock, Thompson appeared at Elena's side with a strange expression. "Someone wants to speak with you at the entrance," he said. "Who?" "A woman. Foreign, by her accent. She said it's urgent." Eleanor walked to the reception of the restaurant. The woman waiting for her was elegant, in a way Eleanor rarely saw. She wore a perfectly tailored navy blue suit, dark hair pulled into an impeccable bun, and carried a bag that probably cost more than Elena's annual salary. But it was her eyes that caught attention. Dark, intense eyes that studied Elena with a mixture of curiosity and something that seemed like pain. "You are Elena?" the woman asked. Her English was correct but carried an Arabic accent. "I am." "And you are?" The woman took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. "My name is Nadia al-Rashidi. I am Khalid's daughter. And if what my father told me is true, that means I am your sister." Eleanor processed the words. "He told you? I thought he was going to wait for the test result." "My father can't hide anything from me. We've always been very close. And when he came back from America different, I knew something important had happened." "Different how?" "Lighter. More hopeful. He spent years carrying a weight I never understood. And suddenly that weight seemed to have lifted. I had to insist, but he told me everything." Nadia looked around the restaurant, clearly uncomfortable. "Can we talk somewhere more private? My shift doesn't end until midnight." "I'll wait." There was something in Nadia's voice that wouldn't take no for an answer. Eleanor nodded and returned to work. The following 2 hours were a torture of anticipation. When her shift finally ended, Eleanor found Nadia seated in a cafe across the street. "Thank you for waiting," Elena said, sitting down. I traveled 12 hours to be here. A few more hours don't make a difference. You came from abroad just to meet me. I came because my father told me a story that changed everything I thought I knew about my family. And because if you are my sister, I needed to see with my own eyes. Nadia studied Elena's face for a long moment. It's true, she said finally, her voice loaded with emotion. You have his eyes, and something more that I can't explain but that I recognize. You believe in me? Without the test? I believe in my father, and I believe in what I'm seeing. Nadia held Elena's hand. I always wanted a sister. I grew up surrounded by expectations, by rules, by a brother who saw everything as competition. I always felt alone, even surrounded by people. I also grew up alone, Elena said. It was just me and my mother. Tell me about her, about Fatima. The memories came in waves, sweet and painful at the same time. She was the strongest person I've ever known. She worked all day giving language classes, came home exhausted but always had energy to help me with homework, to teach me Arabic, to tell me stories. Stories about what? About distant lands, about princes and princesses, about loves that transcended time. Elena smiled sadly. Now I understand that she was talking about herself and your father. She never mentioned his name? Never. I would ask about my father and she would always deflect. She said some questions have answers too heavy for a child. I used to get angry thinking she was hiding something terrible from me. Now I understand she was protecting me. Protecting you from what? From pain, perhaps. From complexity. She knew that if I discovered the truth, I would want to look for my father. And she was probably afraid of what your family would do. Nadia nodded slowly. My grandfather was a terrible man. Controlling, manipulative. He destroyed my father's life in several ways, and only now am I understanding the extent of it. Khalid told me he gave an ultimatum. More than an ultimatum. My grandfather had a pattern. If he couldn't control something, he destroyed it. When my father chose Fatima, my grandfather must have seen it as a personal affront. He probably threatened your mother in ways we can't even imagine. Do you think he threatened her with death? I don't know. But I know my grandfather was capable of anything to maintain control, and if Fatima fled to the other side of the world, it's because the threat was real. Heavy silence between the two. Nadia, can I ask you something? Of course. What is your life like? There, in your family? Nadia let out a long sigh. It's golden on the outside and empty on the inside. We have everything money can buy, but we lack the essential. My mother lives in her own world. My brother only cares about power. And my father spent decades haunted by a love he lost. I grew up trying to find my place in a family that never seemed to really see me. I'm sorry. Don't be. Because now something has changed. My father found you. And for the first time in years, I saw him smile truly. You gave him hope, Elena. You don't even know what a gift that is. Elena felt tears coming. I didn't do anything. I just spoke Arabic with him. You did much more than that. You existed. You are proof that his love for Fatima was real, that it produced something beautiful. Nadia squeezed Elena's hand. And now, you are my sister. And I won't let anyone take that from us. Anyone like who? Nadia's expression closed. My brother, Tariq. When he finds out about you, he won't react well. Khalid told me something similar. Tariq sees the company, the fortune, as his by right. He won't accept sharing with a sister who appeared out of nowhere, and he has resources to make people's lives difficult. You're scaring me. I'm preparing you. Because if you are my sister, you're now part of a complicated family with powerful interests at stake, and you need to know that not everyone will welcome you with open arms. Elena thought about the black car she had noticed a few times in recent days. Nadia, there's something I need to tell you. What? I think I'm being followed. Nadia's eyes widened. Followed? By whom? I don't know. A black car that appears in different places. Maybe I'm being paranoid, but you're not being paranoid. Nadia leaned forward, her voice low. Tariq has people who work for him. Investigators, security. If he already knows about you, he might be monitoring you. But how would he know? Your father said he hadn't told yet. Tariq has his own informants. Nothing happens in my father's business without him knowing. Nadia grabbed her phone. I need to call my father now. While Nadia spoke in rapid Arabic on the phone, Eleanor looked through the cafe window. On the other side of the street, partially hidden in the shadows, was the black car. And this time, she was certain it wasn't paranoia. The man inside the car was watching her directly, without trying to hide. And when their eyes met, he smiled. A cold, calculated smile that made Elena's blood run cold. "Nadia," she interrupted the call. "He's here. The car, across the street." Nadia looked in the indicated direction. Her expression hardened. "That's Omar, my brother's right-hand man. What do we do?" Nadia stood up, throwing money on the table. "We get out of here now. My father is sending security, but until they arrive, we're not safe." The two left the cafe through the back door, entering a dark and damp alley. As they ran, Elena realized that her simple life as a waitress had ended forever. She was now in the middle of a family war she was only beginning to understand, and the DNA test hadn't even arrived yet. Elena and Nadia ran through the dark and damp alley, their footsteps echoing against the brick walls. Elena's heart beat so hard she could hear it in her ears, pulsing with pure adrenaline. "This way," Nadia whispered, pulling her to a less illuminated side street. They emerged on a busy avenue full of cars and people. Nadia raised her hand with authority, and a taxi stopped immediately. "Grand Meridian Hotel," she told the driver with urgency in her voice. As the taxi quickly pulled away, Elena looked through the rear window with a tight heart. There was no sign of the black car. "Do you think he followed us?" "Omar doesn't need to follow us physically. He already knows where you live, where you work, your complete routine." Nadia grabbed her phone. "My father is furious. He didn't know Tariq had already found out about you." The taxi stopped in front of a luxurious hotel with an imposing facade. Nadia's room was a spacious suite on the top floor, with a panoramic view of the illuminated city. "Sit down," Nadia said. "I'll order something for you to eat." "I'm not hungry. My stomach is too nervous." "You're pale and trembling. You need to eat something to calm down." While Nadia made the order by phone, Elena tried to process everything that had happened. In less than 2 weeks, her entire life had transformed completely and irreversibly. "Why does your brother see me as a threat?" Elena asked when Nadia hung up. "I've already said several times that I don't want any money. It's not about what you want or say. It's about what you represent." Nadia sat beside her on the sofa. "If you are really my father's daughter, you are the firstborn. You were born before Tariq, and that matters so much. In our family, it matters a lot. Traditionally, the firstborn inherits leadership of the business. Tariq spent his entire life preparing to assume that role. If an older sister appears, the entire power structure he built could completely collapse. But I don't want to lead anything. I have no interest in business. Tariq won't take the risk. He will try to discredit you, push you away, or convince you to give up any bond with the family." A knock on the door announced room service. Elena nibbled on a sandwich without tasting it, her mind still processing the night's revelations. "My mother knew all of this," Elena said quietly, almost to herself. "That's why she never told me the truth. That's why she fled to the other side of the world. Your mother was very brave. She protected you from a world that could have been very cruel to both of you." Nadia's phone rang. She answered, and her expression immediately changed, becoming serious. "Understood. Send them up immediately." "What happened?" Elena asked, alarmed. "My father's security arrived at the hotel, and he's personally coming here now." Minutes later, 3 men in suits entered the suite, positioning themselves strategically. Soon after, Khalid al-Rashidi entered, his face marked by deep and visible concern. "Are you okay?" he asked Elena immediately. "I am. Nadia got me out of there in time." Khalid embraced his younger daughter with force. "Thank you for protecting her." "She's my sister. Of course I would protect her." Khalid turned back to Elena. "This shouldn't have happened. I should have foreseen that Tariq would eventually find out." "Tariq called me an hour ago," Khalid continued, his voice heavy. "He demanded an urgent board meeting to discuss what he calls the family situation." "And what did you tell him?" "That the only problematic situation is his unacceptable behavior." At that moment, Khalid's phone rang again. He looked at the screen and his face visibly paled. "It's the laboratory. The DNA test result." The silence in the room was absolute and tense. Elena felt her heart stop for a second. Khalid answered, listening in silence for long seconds without saying a single word. Finally, he hung up and turned to Elena. There were tears in his dark eyes. "Positive," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "You are my daughter." Officially, scientifically, without any possible doubt. Elena felt her legs weaken beneath her. Nadia rushed to support her while Khalid approached with slow, emotional steps. "My daughter," he repeated, the words loaded with decades of meaning and pain. 30 years searching for Fatima, and now I discover I had a wonderful daughter this whole time. A daughter who grew up without me. He embraced her, and this time there was no hesitation. It was the embrace of a father who had finally found what he had lost forever. Nadia joined them, and the three figures remained united for a long moment, an unlikely family reunited against all the odds of destiny. But the peace was short-lived. The suite door opened with violent force, and a man entered unannounced, ignoring the security guards. Tariq al-Rashidi looked at the family scene with poorly disguised contempt. "How touching," he said with cutting sarcasm. The great patriarch embracing his newly discovered, unrecognized daughter. "Tariq." Khalid's voice was pure ice. "You weren't invited here." "I don't need an invitation. I'm your legitimate son, your true heir." Tariq's cold eyes fixed on Elena with open hostility. "Unlike this opportunist who appeared out of nowhere. The DNA test confirms she is my biological daughter. Tests can be manipulated. Laboratories can be bought. Are you accusing me of fraud?" Eleanor felt rage explode inside her. "I didn't ask for absolutely anything. I never wanted money." "Of course not. People like you never ask directly. You manipulate, seduce, play innocent victims." "Tariq, enough." Khalid placed himself between his son and Elena. "You will not speak to her like that in my presence." "I will speak as I please. While you were playing happy family with this stranger, I was protecting our business, our reputation. The board is very concerned, Father. The board meeting is tomorrow morning. You can present your concerns there, formally." "And will she be present at that meeting?" "She will." "As my recognized daughter." Tariq let out a bitter, short laugh. "Your daughter, a waitress you met 2 weeks ago. You're acting like a threat, Tariq. You sent Omar to follow her. You're trying to use the board against me. I'm protecting what is ours by right." "You mean yours, don't you? Because that's what you've always wanted. Not the family, not the legacy, not the honor. Just power for yourself." Tariq fell silent, his jaw locked with contained rage. "I'll see you at the meeting tomorrow, son. And I hope by then you've reconsidered your position and your behavior." Tariq turned and left the suite, slamming the door hard behind him. "I'm sorry for that," Khalid said to Elena with a tired expression. "Tariq is very difficult to deal with." "He hates me," Elena said simply. "He hates the idea of you. Because you represent everything he is not. Integrity, humility, detachment from material things. This isn't going to end well, is it? I don't know how it will end, but I know I won't abandon you. I lost your mother because I didn't fight hard enough for her. I won't make the same mistake with you." Eleanor looked at Nadia, who was pale but determined. "We'll face this together," Nadia said, "as true sisters." The next morning, the board meeting room occupied the entire executive floor of the hotel. Glass walls offered an impressive view of the city, but no one was interested in the scenery. All eyes were fixed on the door, waiting for the protagonists. Elena adjusted the elegant blazer that Nadia had lent her. It was the first time she had worn such expensive clothes, and the fine fabric felt strange against her skin. "Are you ready?" Khalid asked at her side. "No, but I'll go anyway." Khalid smiled slightly. "Your mother would say exactly that." The double doors opened and they entered together. The room was full. 12 board members sat around an oval table of polished mahogany. Tariq occupied a chair at the opposite end, Omar standing behind him like a shadow. And in a corner, observing everything in silence, was Samira al-Rashidi, Khalid's wife. "Gentlemen," Khalid began with a firm voice, "this meeting was called by my son Tariq to discuss what he calls the family situation. I am here to clarify any doubts." "The doubt is simple," Tariq interrupted. "Who is this woman and why would she have any right over our family?" "This woman is my daughter, Elena Fatima Vasquez al-Rashidi." Murmurs swept through the room. "Based on what?" Tariq demanded. "A DNA test that you yourself ordered?" Khalid removed an envelope from his pocket. "The test was performed by an independent certified laboratory. The results are unequivocal." Eleanor stood up slowly. All heads turned to her. "May I speak?" Khalid nodded. Eleanor walked to the center of the room, feeling all eyes on her. "My name is Elena. Until 2 weeks ago, I was just a waitress. I worked 6 days a week, earned enough to pay rent. I never asked anyone for anything in my entire life." She looked directly at Tariq, holding his hostile gaze. "I didn't come after money. I don't want your inheritance. I don't want your company. What I want is to know my history, to know who my father was, to understand why my mother lived hidden her entire life." "Pretty words," Tariq said with contempt. "Then let's make a deal." Eleanor pulled a folded paper from her pocket. This is a formal renunciation of any right over the Al-Rashidi fortune. If I sign, I abdicate any claim. Forever. The silence was absolute. You're bluffing, Tariq said, but there was uncertainty in his voice. I'm being honest. Something apparently rare in this family. Elena placed the paper on the table. But before signing, I want the truth. The whole truth about what happened to my mother. It was Samira who spoke, her voice cutting through the silence unexpectedly. Tell her, Khalid. Tell her what your father really did to that woman. You know? Khalid asked, genuinely surprised. I always knew. Your father told me before he died. Samira walked to Eleanor. Your grandfather didn't just threaten your mother. He cruelly blackmailed her. Blackmailed how? Fatima had a younger sister named Layla. Sick, needing expensive medical treatment. Your grandfather offered a deal. If Fatima disappeared forever, he would pay for the treatment. If she refused, the sister would die without assistance. Elena felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. My mother had a sister? Her name is Layla. She survived thanks to the treatment. She lives to this day in Spain. Tears came before Elena could control them. Her mother had sacrificed everything to save a life. She had carried that immense weight alone for 3 decades. Layla keeps hundreds of letters that Fatima wrote in secret over the years. Telling about you, about your life, about the love she felt. Khalid approached Elena with his eyes also watering. Do you want to go to Spain? To meet Layla? I do, more than anything in the world. Then we'll go, together. Tariq slammed his hand on the table with force. This is ridiculous. This meeting is over, Tariq. Khalid turned to his son. You called it to destabilize me. But the only manipulative person here is you. One of the board members spoke up. Tariq's motion is rejected. The vote was unanimous. Tariq stood up furiously. This isn't over, he said to Elena. You will never be my sister. He left, slamming the door. Eleanor looked at the renunciation paper on the table. Khalid followed her gaze. You don't need to sign that. I know. Elena picked up the paper and tore it to pieces. But I wanted them to know I was willing, that it was never about money. Nadia embraced her sister with force. Let's go to Spain, she said. Let's meet Aunt Layla together. And for the first time in a long time, Elena felt that she had a place in the world, a true family, however complicated and imperfect it might be, and a deep and transformative truth that was finally beginning to reveal itself completely after so many years. Chapter 5. The Journey Home. Weeks had passed since the board meeting that changed absolutely everything in Elena's life irreversibly. She was at the international airport, the suitcase at her side, the passport in hand, her heart beating with a mixture of anxiety and expectation she had never felt before in her entire life. The terminal was busy that sunny morning, with hurried travelers crossing in all directions, but Elena barely noticed the chaos around her. Her mind was completely focused on the journey she was about to begin. Around her, forming a circle of support and farewell, were the people who mattered most at that moment. Khalid, dressed with discreet elegance, his eyes loaded with an emotion he no longer tried to hide. Nadia, holding an embroidered handkerchief that had belonged to Fatima, and an unexpected figure who insisted on saying goodbye personally. Marcus, her faithful friend from the years of work at the Golden Horizon restaurant. I still can't believe all this that happened, Marcus said, shaking his head with an incredulous smile on his face. My co-worker, Elena, who served tables with me every night, who complained about the salary and lousy tips, is the daughter of an Arab billionaire. This sounds like a movie script. If someone told me this story a month ago, I would laugh in their face. Elena laughed, a genuine sound that hadn't escaped her lips in weeks. I was having serious problems that night at the restaurant, Marcus. They just weren't the kind you imagined when you saw me leave with that furious man. When you disappeared into that private room for 2 hours, I genuinely thought you were being threatened or blackmailed. I almost called the police 3 times. Marcus held her hands between his. You're going to come back to America, right? Promise me you won't disappear from my life. Promise me you won't become one of those rich people who forget their old friends. I don't know exactly when I'll come back, Marcus. I have a lot of important things to discover first. Many pieces of the puzzle of my life to put together. Many questions that went unanswered for decades, but I promise I won't disappear, and I won't change who I am. You were always a true friend in the most difficult moments of my life, that I will never forget. She hugged him with force and affection, feeling the comforting familiarity of that simple gesture they had shared so many times after exhausting shifts at the restaurant. Khalid approached, checking the elegant watch on his wrist. "The flight is almost at boarding time. Are you ready for this journey, my daughter?" The word daughter still sounded strange and wonderful at the same time in Elena's ears. Every time Khalid pronounced it, she felt a warmth in her chest that she didn't know was possible to feel. Eleanor looked at the departure board. Spain, the country where her Aunt Layla had been waiting for decades, with infinite patience, keeping hundreds of letters written by a mother she had lost too early to a cruel disease. The country where her mother had been born, grown up, dreamed of the future before meeting the love of her life and having that love torn from her. "I am," she said with conviction, "more ready than I've ever been for anything. I need to know this part of my history that was hidden for so long." Nadia hugged her emotionally, eyes shining with tears, and handed her the embroidered handkerchief. "This handkerchief belonged to your mother. Layla sent it to our father many years ago, as proof that Fatima was still alive. He kept it all these years, waiting for the day he could return it. Now it belongs to you." Eleanor held the delicate fabric between her fingers, feeling the soft texture her mother had touched so many times. Embroidery in golden thread formed a pattern of flowers and birds, handcrafted work that revealed hours of dedication and love. "I have a surprise to tell you when you get back," Nadia continued, wiping away tears. "I've decided I'm finally going to open my own art gallery. I'm not going to let the family's expectations dictate my life and choices anymore. You inspired me to have courage, Elena. Seeing you face Tariq and the whole board without backing down showed me that it's possible to be true to yourself." Eleanor felt immense pride in the sister she barely knew, but already loved deeply. "And Tariq?" Elena asked, the inevitable question. "How is he reacting to everything?" "Our father temporarily removed him from the business. He said Tariq needs to learn the true meaning of humility and family before he can come back. Omar was completely fired. Will he ever forgive me? Will he accept that I'm part of the family? I don't know if Tariq is capable of forgiving anything. He's too proud to admit when he's wrong." Nadia held Elena's hands. "But that's not your problem, sister. You did absolutely nothing wrong. You simply existed, and that was enough to change everything. Tariq's inability to accept reality is his problem." The loudspeaker announced final boarding for Madrid, Spain. Elena grabbed her suitcase and walked toward the gate. Before going through security, she looked back one last time, engraving that moment in memory forever. Khalid was waiting on the other side. The father she had never known her entire life, who had spent 3 decades searching for the woman he loved, and who now discovered that the greatest treasure had been on the other side of the ocean the whole time. Nadia waved with tears in her eyes, a sister that generous destiny had unexpectedly gifted her. Marcus smiled, still incredulous at the extraordinary turn in his friend's life, but genuinely happy for her. Her life had changed completely in just a few intense weeks. From anonymous waitress to recognized daughter of a billionaire, from lonely orphan to member of a large and complicated family, from woman without roots to heir of a love story that had crossed decades and continents. But the biggest change wasn't the money, the name, or the status. It was the deep knowledge of who she really was and where she came from. It was finally having answers to the questions that had tormented her throughout her childhood and adolescence. Daughter of Fatima, the extraordinary woman who sacrificed everything for love and for her sick sister, who fled to the other side of the world to protect those she loved, who raised a daughter alone in a foreign land, who kept a secret in her heart until her last breath. Daughter of Khalid, the man who never stopped searching for his lost love, who spent 30 years haunted by an interrupted romance, without imagining that the fruit of that love was growing on another continent. Sister of Nadia, the sensitive artist who would finally find courage to follow her dreams. On the plane, seated next to Khalid in first class, Elena looked through the window as America fell behind, the lights becoming smaller and smaller points until they disappeared in the clouds. "What are you thinking about?" Khalid asked gently, noticing her contemplative silence. "About my mother, about Fatima, about what she would say if she could see me now, flying to Spain, seated next to the man she loved her entire life. What do you think she would say?" Eleanor smiled through the tears, remembering her mother's soft voice, the teachings she carried in her heart, the stories told before bedtime that now made sense. She would say she is proud of me, that I found my true worth, even when others didn't recognize it, that I kept my dignity when it would have been easy to lose it. She would say that true love is not measured in money or power, but in sacrifice, courage, and difficult choices made for love. Khalid held her hand with paternal affection, his eyes shining. Your mother was the wisest and most courageous woman I ever knew in my entire life, and you are exactly like her in everything that matters. The same inner strength, the same unshakable integrity, the same generous heart. The plane crossed the Atlantic during the starlit night, carrying Elena toward a future she could never have imagined. In Spain, an aunt awaited with open arms and a precious chest full of letters yellowed by time. Hundreds of pages written over 3 decades, containing the most intimate thoughts of a mother to a distant sister. The plane landed in Madrid at dawn, when the sun painted the sky in golden and pink tones over the city. The ancient city stretched below them, with its terracotta roofs and narrow streets. Elena and Khalid took a car to the small coastal town where Layla had lived for decades, in a simple house with a view of the infinite sea. When the car stopped in front of the blue-painted wooden gate, Eleanor felt her heart race. Her mother had grown up there, played in those narrow streets, dreamed of the future looking at that same ocean. The door opened slowly, and a woman with grey hair appeared. Her eyes, the same eyes as Fatima, the same eyes as Elena, filled with tears upon seeing the niece she had only known through letters and photographs. "Elena," Layla whispered, her voice choked. "My dear Elena, you're exactly like your mother was. The same eyes, the same smile, the same way of tilting your head when you're thinking." They embraced at the gate, 2 women connected by a love that transcended decades of separation. Eleanor cried in her aunt's arms, finally finding a living piece of her mother that still existed in the world. Inside the modest house, Layla led them to a room where a wooden chest sat on an old table. When she opened it, Eleanor saw hundreds of envelopes carefully organized by year, each one containing letters from Fatima. "Your mother wrote to me every month for 30 years, Layla said, her voice trembling with emotion. "She told me everything about you, about your first words, your first steps, your achievements in school. She told me about the hard days and the happy days. I know you, Elena, even though we've never met. I know you through your mother's words." Elena picked up the first letter with trembling hands. The date was from the year she was born. Her mother's handwriting, elegant and careful, filled the yellowed page. "My dear sister," the letter began, "today I held my daughter for the first time. She has Khalid's eyes and my smile. I named her Elena Fatima, so that she may carry a piece of me wherever she goes. I know I made the right choice, even though it breaks my heart every day. She will grow up loved, protected, free from the shadows that would have darkened her life. One day, she will understand. One day she will know the truth." Eleanor couldn't read any more through the tears. Khalid put his arm around her shoulders while Layla held her hand. "There are 342 letters," Layla said. "Take as long as you need to read them. Your mother's voice lives in these pages." They spent the following days in that small house by the sea, reading letters, sharing memories, putting together the pieces of a life divided by circumstances but united by love. Elena learned about her mother's childhood, her dreams, her fears, her unwavering love for the daughter she raised alone. She learned about the sacrifices, the lonely nights, the strength it took to build a life from nothing. But she also learned about joy, about the pride Fatima felt with every achievement of her daughter, about the happiness in simple moments, birthdays celebrated with modest cakes, holidays spent just the 2 of them, but full of love, about the certainty that she had done the right thing, even when doubt crept in. On the last night in Spain, Eleanor sat on the beach, looking at the stars reflected in the calm sea. Khalid sat beside her, in a comfortable silence they had learned to share. "I used to be so angry at her," Elena finally said, "for keeping secrets, for never telling me about you, about Layla, about our real history. And now? Now I understand that everything she did was out of love. Every choice, every sacrifice, every silent tear. She gave me a normal life, protected me from a world that would have consumed us. She made herself invisible so I could shine. Your mother was extraordinary. I know, and now I carry her with me in a different way, not with the pain of unanswered questions, but with the peace of finally understanding." Eleanor took the embroidered handkerchief from her pocket, the one that had belonged to Fatima, and held it against her heart. "I'm going to live a life worthy of her sacrifice. I'm going to carry her love forward, share her kindness with others, honor her memory through my actions." That's what she would have wanted. Khalid took her hand. And you won't have to do it alone. You have a family now. Complicated, imperfect, but a family that loves you. Even Tariq? Tariq will come around eventually. Or he won't. Either way, his choices don't define your worth or your place in this family. You are my daughter. Nothing will ever change that. Elena leaned her head on her father's shoulder, watching the waves gently break on the shore. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, from a busy restaurant in Manhattan to a peaceful beach in Spain, from a waitress ignored by an angry billionaire to a daughter found after 30 years. Life, she realized, was full of unexpected turns, full of pain and joy intertwined, of losses that led to discoveries, of endings that were really new beginnings. Her mother had taught her that, in her own way, through every difficult choice she made. "I'm going to visit Mum's grave when I get back to America," Elena said. "I want to tell her that I finally know the truth, that I finally understand, that I forgive her for every secret, because now I see they were all acts of love." She would like that. And then I'm going to figure out what comes next. I don't know what my future looks like anymore. Everything has changed so drastically. You don't have to decide anything right now. You have time, you have resources, you have people who love you. Whatever you choose to do, we'll support you. Elena smiled, feeling a peace she hadn't known in years, maybe ever. The pain of losing her mother would never fully go away, but it was now accompanied by something new, a deep understanding of the love that had shaped her entire life. She stood up, brushing sand from her clothes, and offered her hand to Khalid. "Let's go inside. Aunt Layla is making dinner, and she promised to tell us more stories about Mom when she was young." As they walked back to the house, the small lights from the windows glowing warmly in the darkness, Elena felt the presence of her mother all around her, in the salt air, in the sound of the waves, in the very fabric of the handkerchief she still held in her hand. "I found my way home, Mom," she thought. "Not a place, but a truth, a family, a love that time and distance couldn't destroy. Thank you for everything you gave me. Thank you for everything you sacrificed. I understand now, and I will make you proud." Inside, laughter echoed from the kitchen as Layla told a story about Fatima as a girl. Nadia's voice came through the phone speaker, joining the conversation from across the ocean. Khalid smiled as he listened, finally at peace after decades of searching. Elena stood in the doorway watching the scene before her. This was her family now, built not by blood alone, but by love, by sacrifice, by the courage of a woman who gave up everything so her daughter could have a better life. She stepped inside and joined them, taking her rightful place at the table. Finally, after all these years, Elena Fatima Vasquez al-Rashidi was exactly where she was meant to be. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share with someone who needs to hear this message of love and forgiveness, and subscribe to never miss another inspiring story.